chat. Keep it alive, through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc, I rip to a tear. Switch the scenario, my stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away, asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. Once again with your host, Nick Bernabe, here on UCY.TV. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'm really happy to be back with you. Got a great show in store for you tonight. Going to be covering a lot of ground, talking about a lot of stuff going on. I mean, the political stuff, the police state, the drug war, I mean, you name it. We're covering it tonight. If you want to join the call, feel free to. You can reach us at 718-717-8296. The only thing we ask is that if you do call in, keep your microphone on muted, mute the radio behind you, and then we'll bring you into the call once we're ready for you. We'll announce your area code, and then that'll be your signal that you're on the call. We're working on getting a call screening process going, but you know that's coming up in the future. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. We're working on it, but we're trying to figure out the process to get it going. But anyway, we're going to be covering plenty of things tonight, and I'm going to be joined by a few people on the call. Awesome panel. And we're going to be taking calls a little bit later. And, make sure that you catch us 5 days a week. We're here Monday through Friday here on UCY. And you can also catch us at the antimedia.org/radio. We're working on getting DB a better connection too. My longtime co-host, he's been having some technical issues. It's kind of running a radio over the internet. It's a little tricky at times, but we're getting it done. We're dealing with it. We're also got an awesome new website that we're working with, the Underground Reporter, which is an offshoot of the Anti-Media and being run by the Anti-Media staff. Hopefully everybody's been seeing the posts on our Facebook page, but the site's doing really well, and we're having a bunch of people reading what we're posting, and it's a little bit of a different vibe, a little bit of a different angle to the news, and solutions and all kinds of cool stuff going on. But either way, I mean, it's just more of this kind of anti-establishment message that we're going to be talking about tonight. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be opening up some new websites pretty soon here, and just trying to reach as many people as possible. And that's really the message, and that's the goal that we're trying to do is illuminate the darkness with this information, because information is really dangerous. We talked about it last show on Monday about censorship and how we're dealing with censorship personally at the Anti-Media, whether it be through Facebook or through Google or other different ways that we're dealing with having a breakthrough in countries that are banning our content and things like that. We're trying to fight through it, but it's a struggle. But with you guys supporting us, we can fight through this and we can make it happen. Anyway, that being said, Make sure you know, if you miss any of our shows, you can find us on YouTube too, because all of these shows wind up on YouTube. And if you go to UCY TV's YouTube channel, you can see all of our old shows. And on the website, on the antimedia.org/radio, we try to put all the most recent YouTube videos of the shows up there, so that you can catch the stuff if you miss it. I know it's really late on the East Coast. You know, the show starts at 11, goes on until midnight. I know a lot of people don't stay up that late, so you can always listen to it the next morning when you're in traffic going to work. I mean, I know you guys don't want to hear Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh spouting off the top of their heads with a bunch of reactionary crap that doesn't make any sense. So that's why we're trying to provide a little bit more of an intellectual breakdown, or at least a non-reactionary breakdown of what's going on. And our last show really exemplified that. So I'm really happy with Monday's show. Make sure you go check that out if you didn't. Anyway, that being said, I want to bring on my co-host, DB Schwartz. What's up, man?
Hello?
Hey, sorry, caller from 323. We'll bring you on in a few minutes. Just be patient with us, and you'll be on the show in a little bit. I'm trying to get my co-host on here.
Hey, Nick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hey, Nick. Pretty much what you're saying about what's going on right now in the world is popping off right up here with Jamar.
With what's going on?
With Jamar Clark and the decision of the cops or whoever, the prosecutor, not to charge any of the officers involved, and pretty much just said no case is going to come out of this at all.
Yeah, and again, man, it's a matter of lack of accountability. You know what I mean? And that's why it's so important for people to pay attention to the independent media and stuff, because we're trying to shine a light on this stuff, you know. And despite the censorship, despite anything going on, you know, there's people out there, activists and journalists, that are going to be persisting through all this, you know, persisting through the fray, to try to expose the corruption, man. And, you know, that's what it is. You know, this police state stuff, all the killings going on with the cops, it's corruption, it's racism, it's no accountability, it's militarization, you know, and it's the rooster coming home, the chickens coming home to roost when it comes to the massive buildup for after 9/11 and all that weaponry and all that gear and stuff. And then it came home and armed up the military, you know, the militarized cops here in the U.S. And, you know, they get these toys and they want to play with them, and they want to, you know, and it builds up this builds up this bad mentality, you know, and that's what it is. It's this mentality of militarized policing, where they think they can kind of get away with anything. And, you know, when things go down like what you're talking about, it reinforces the idea that they can get away with anything, right?
It's shocking up here because you're talking about like a total of about 10 or 11 guys in the last 8 years or so that have been killed by the police up here. It doesn't happen all the time. It happens once a year. So for this to happen, man, and yeah, man, it's just getting the community of North Minneapolis up in arms. But it's bringing about solidarity. Today, the march in front of the Hennepin County building brought out a lot of LGBT people to come support, and people were coming together. So there is that. I mean, they were afraid of having a riot, and they had people ready for that. But I think people are realizing that plays to them, and we got to just stick together and start breaking these walls down around the people and the so-called authority.
Exactly, dude, and that's what it's about, man, and that's what the media and these politicians are constantly trying to do here, is divide and conquer, split people apart. And today, the news narrative, because, you know, at the beginning of the show, we always like to talk about what's trending in the news and all that stuff. And so, obviously, the narrative today was about Donald Trump and how he made some remarks about abortion. And he said that he wanted women to be punished if they get caught having illegal abortions and stuff like that. And it caused this whole firestorm or whatever. I mean,
he imploded his own campaign because, like, even Republican women aren't going to vote for him now.
Yeah, and you know the thing is here is that this whole abortion issue is one of these social issues that's very much a divide and conquer issue, right? It's one of these things where it's like it's a social issue where they can say, okay, well, you know, choose your side. It's either you're against it or you're for. You're either pro-life or pro-choice. which is even the language there is not correct because most people that consider themselves pro-life are also in favor of bombing the shit out of countries all around the world and don't really care about other lives. And in fact, they don't even care about, many of them don't even care about minority lives. And once they get out of the womb, it's like, well, once the baby's born, then we don't really care about it. But, while it's in the womb, we can't let them have an abortion. But again, this is one of these issues that, and it's 2016, man, and we're sitting here and the nation is being divided over abortion. And this is an issue that should have been put to rest a long time ago. And it was put to rest a long time ago. But yet it's still one of these issues that these guys use to run on. The Republicans and Democrats run on these issues. And it splits the country in half, even though it's an issue that is not, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just one of these issues that they purposely use to polarize people, and it's not really something that is having a broad effect on the bigger scheme of things. But they love the fact that people latch onto this stuff, and they can turn it into this big, huge debate. We're going to talk about this for like 2 weeks, the whole abortion thing. And meanwhile, like all the other big issues that should also be talked about are going to be continued to be ignored. And the foreign policy, the police state, the amount of people locked up in the United States. I mean, we're going to talk about all that stuff tonight too. But this is the way they play this game, and the Trump thing. Who knows how it's going to play out? But we know that the media is going to turn it into a big circus, like they already have. And it's just going to be, another step in the march forward to this election, and that's what the election is going to be about, man. This election, especially if they can get a couple superficial people running, or in the general, if it's Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, we're talking about probably one of the most superficial elections in a long time. People that.
Then it's time to make expatriation plans, honestly.
Yeah, if that's the case, I mean, there's a lot of people talking about that, and we talked about this a lot on the last show, and that's why I encourage people to go back and listen to all the stuff that we talk about, because we're continuously talking about stuff and carrying on from what we're talking about, from previous episodes. But, the whole Trump thing with banning Muslims and building a wall and all that stuff, it's so superficial. It doesn't even, it goes without saying that he's not looking at the underlying issues that are causing the Muslims to leave their homelands and causing immigration from Latin America. I mean, we're not even talking about why those things are happening. We're just talking about, hey, ban Muslims and build a big wall, and like that fixes it. And so you got that superficial, stuff going on. Then you got Hillary, who's basically running on the platform of elect the first woman because why not? And not too many news outlets are willing to dig deeper into Hillary Clinton's past and dig deeper into her record of of all the blood on her hands, the regime change, the country's overthrown, the civil wars, and all the, who knows what. I mean, there's probably a lot more dirty things that we just probably never will find out about Hillary Clinton, but the news outlets don't want to cover that. They want to cover this inevitability, and if you don't support Hillary, you're a sexist, and this, that, and the other. It's a very superficial, very, very superficial election cycle going on right now. And there are candidates that are trying to crack into a little bit of deeper issues. I think Bernie Sanders is trying to get above the fray there on that. And then even Trump on some issues on trade and things like that, he is going a little deeper than the average, Republican and stuff. But, these stories aren't the ones that are getting much coverage. I mean, you would think that when Trump called out Bush for lying about 9/11, you would think that would be like news cycle material for a couple of weeks. But obviously that's not a topic that they want to talk about, because then it would expose the foreign policy for, maybe what it is. And we're also going to talk about the foreign policy stuff tonight too, man. We got a lot of ground to cover. DB, I think it's just going to be you and me tonight. I'm not sure if Claire or Jake are going to be joining us, but we are going to take some callers. But there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So beyond this abortion thing, you got the gun rights issue here that is pretty interesting. So apparently the Republican National Convention is being held over in Ohio at this convention center that is apparently a gun-free zone, right? And, the Republicans are the party of gun rights, supposedly, and so it's kind of interesting that they, are having their convention at a gun-free place. So somebody launched a petition that quickly went like extremely viral to allow guns in the convention center, and anybody reading this petition could probably see that very thinly veiled sarcasm and satire built into this petition. But some of these people took it pretty seriously, and I guess it kind of just goes to show the level of understanding that a lot of these candidates have. But Trump actually was like, oh, I'd consider it. I'd consider the petition and stuff. And it's like, dude, do you not understand that this petition was written from a satirical angle? I mean, all you got to do is actually read the thing.
Could you imagine the liability on that event?
It would be crazy because, Ohio is an open carry state. And I already know several protesters personally that are planning on showing up at the RNC heavily armed. They're not planning on hurting anybody, but they're planning on exercising their Second Amendment outside of
RPG or
no, probably more like assault rifles. But people are going to be out there protesting armed, and so that's going to be you're going to see what's going to happen. The cops in I think Cleveland are already buying riot gear and stuff in preparation for these protests because pretty much every whether it's the Democratic National Convention or the Republican National Convention, there's always huge protests outside of them. And so the Cleveland authorities are already bulking up on riot gear because they're expecting something to pop off.
Right.
And looking at past discretions here when it comes to like Ferguson, Baltimore, and stuff, you'll see that a lot of times it's in many cases it's the cops that actually trigger the rioting and stuff. And it's not the people going out there because they're like, yeah, we're just going to go out there and riot today. It's like they go out there to protest, and then the cops trigger a riot by overreacting or by being too forceful or whatever. There's various different reasons. Definitely in Ferguson, that's what triggered at least initially triggered the rioting and stuff going on.
Right.
So we're gonna have to wait and see how that turns out. I mean, it's kind of funny that a lot of people were getting serious about this. The Secret Service put out a statement saying that they're not going to allow guns at the RNC.
And it's all for nothing, Nick, because it's wrapped up already. At this point, it's just going through the motions. The real action is going to be the DNC convention.
Yeah, it's going to be. We
expect what's going to happen. We know they're going to steal it, and we know there's millions and millions of really young people. Not all the young people, but I'm just saying, man, there's a lot of people with a lot of time on their hands and energy, and I think they're going to make it into a shit show, and I'm going to go.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think the DNC is going to be more interesting because, I don't know too much about Bernie Sanders and his background or what he's willing to put himself through. I don't know that he'd show up even if he didn't have the delegate count and actually try to fight for.
He would. Yeah, he's going to go all the way through.
It'd be cool if he did.
Yeah, because they're going to force a split. I mean, this DNC, the Democratic Party, is dead, dude. It's going to get split in half between people that think they're liberals but are really neocons, and then an actual progressive party that I hope is going to magnetize the Green Party, the Democratic Socialists, and other big parties, maybe even the Libertarian Party, and pull them all together and get something that actually works for people in there.
Yeah, and the thing going on with Clinton and Bernie is a little more kind of overt. It's like there's been several cases of some questionable things going on. Arizona, probably the most recent, where people had to stand in line for hours and hours.
They're hacking the voting machines too, Nick. What's happening is there's more votes than actual voters. And they're all electronic, and like something around 98% were for Clinton, something really ridiculously obvious because they must be hiring incompetent morons. I mean, they're probably hiring the lowest bidder. You know what I mean? These cheapskate millionaires and billionaires, they're just hiring crappy guys, hacking, leaving all their traces behind them.
Yeah, and even in Iowa, the first state to vote, the first caucus, even though it's not electronic machines, I mean, there was definitely plenty of reports of some foul play and some wrongdoing, and at the very least, questionable things going on. And so I think you're right, man. I mean, the DNC, the Democratic Party, if Bernie Sanders winds up winning, and at least winning out most of the rest of the states, and then they still give it to Clinton, I think there'll be a schism in that party, and that may fracture the party into several pieces, and who knows where those pieces are going to land. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the same thing goes with Trump. As bad as Trump is, and the crazy shit and the dumb shit and the fascist stuff and the hateful things that he says and the followers that he's inspired, at the same time, he's still definitely not a Republican Party insider, and he's not being, the party is really trying to outmaneuver him in whatever way they can. I mean, to the point where even when Rubio was still in the race, he was like telling his supporters to vote for Kasich in Ohio. You know what I mean? And so like they're doing a bunch of weird squirrely things against Trump as well, and so that could lead to some kind of schism in the Republican end of the spectrum, and you could see a kind of like nationalist, fascist type of party split out from there, and then you'll have like the regular Republican, like conservatives, and then maybe some libertarians split out from that as well. And so you could see the Republican Party split into three pieces. And we actually talked about this briefly last show. Jake was mentioning it about like Ralph Nader and how he was talking about how the people that are kind of like the Bernie Sanders types and then the people that are kind of like Ron Paul types, they need to come together and start forming their own alliances and maybe their own party to work on a compromise platform, some kind of compromise ticket or part, right, something like that, to try to get some fresh ideas infused into this debate. Because right now we're talking about abortion. We're talking about We're
talking about issues that are settled or issues that the government has no right to be involved in.
Exactly. We're talking about stuff that the government shouldn't be doing. We're talking about gay marriage. We're talking about abortion. We're talking about Trump and Cruz's wives. I mean, this is what we're talking about right now. And it's very superficial, very superficial. And anytime people want to dig deeper into these topics, I mean, it's kind of just, okay, here's a brief story about it, and now let's talk about the real story here, and here's what Trump said about abortion. It's like, dude, like maybe people actually want to hear about the real stories and the more deep topics. But I guess the news media, they got their sound bites and they got to do their thing and make their money and do what they got to do. The other thing to keep in mind is that these news corporations are extremely big, and they're part of a broader network of businesses, and they're kind of owned. They're all conglomerates, and there's conflicts of interest between like the military industrial complex, the people that make money from the wars, and the private prison industries and stuff. And so
the military and the banks are at war right now, Nick, in Syria.
Yeah.
You have the CIA funded and the Pentagon funded. And of course, the CIA is a private corporation, and it's traded on the stock market.
Yeah, you got CIA rebels in Syria fighting against Pentagon rebels in Syria, and it's like this is the kind of stuff that you literally just can't make up. I mean, it's too real for comfort, man. It's really bad. And so on that point about these parties, and Underground Reporter actually covered a story on it recently about how the parties are this may be the final, the last final year for these parties to be, at least what they are. And what we know them as for the last several decades. On that note, Anonymous recently, we covered this yesterday by Jake, and that's why I was hoping he was on the call tonight, because I wanted to talk about this because he wrote the article. But Anonymous actually launched an op to kind of promote third parties and try to get the notion out there that it's like our only choices aren't Republican and Democrat. You know what I mean? And that's, again, back to the media. The media only tells us these two options. It's like, okay, look, here's the Republicans and here's the Democrats. Here's Trump and here's Clinton. And like, that's pretty much, that's the narrative. And, you got a democracy. You get to pick between the two of these guys. And, that's it.
We can start a new party now. I mean, this is the time. The millennials have this massive wave behind them. They're just sick of this shit, dude. They don't want either of these establishment neocons, dude, at all. I mean, they're just sick of them, dude. So this is the time to make a third party right now.
Exactly. And I think that's why Anonymous was putting that out there. And it was called Op Jill Stein. Now, Jill Stein is the Green Party candidate, which is... she kind of makes she's kind of like in the same vein as Bernie Sanders, I think, much further left.
She should be his VP.
Yeah, I mean, if Sanders got the shaft, and keep in mind he's been a lifetime independent, right? So if If
He's just playing the game right now.
If Sanders got shortchanged at the convention and he decided to run third party, brought Jill Stein on as his vice president, I mean, that would be a very interesting prospect, and especially if the same thing went with the Republicans and they screwed Trump and a bunch of Republicans are disenfranchised. As much as I can't stand the people that are supporting Trump, man, I mean, it's a variable that we can't discredit. It's a variable that is a very angry and motivated bunch of people that if their guy doesn't get in, I mean, they're going to be pretty mad about it, and who knows what in the hell is going to happen, in that situation. So
they'll secede.
What was that?
They'll secede.
Yeah. This is probably one of the most consequential elections, at least from the broader perspective that I've ever seen. And I was talking to my grandma on Easter, and she even said it. And my grandma's in her 80s, and she's like, "This is the craziest election I've ever seen." And she's been around, man.
Because the war is real, dude. I think people realized that before World War II happened, kind of like the decade before, when the economy's kind of bouncing back and they had FDR and everything was going great, right? And then they dropped this freaking war on them, and everything's going poorly, and they want to pull the economy back up with another war, but you can't have a war like we used to have. I mean, the stakes are way, way, way greater now.
Yeah, I mean, it's mutually assured destruction now, and so we can't play the same game we played back after World War II and after that. Now, I got a interesting development regarding Gary Johnson, who's the libertarian, probably the front-running libertarian candidate for the Libertarian Party for the 2016 presidency. And he was included in a recent poll, and he polled at 11% against Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump when they put him in a three-way head-to-head matchup. And he polled 11%, even though literally the majority of people that took the poll didn't even know who he was.
He should be Bernie's Secretary of State.
Yeah, or VP.
Whatever you want to do. Those three are great, all in a tandem.
Yeah, dude. And so, he's a libertarian, and I've seen other polling too, just asking people questions, like disregarding the parties, disregarding ideology, just asking people questions. And it actually showed that a lot of the country, and in fact, a huge percentage, I think it was actually over near 50%, actually are at this point kind of libertarian leaning on many issues. And the libertarian kind of philosophy is live and let live. And now they do have some, I guess, Greens and libertarians would differ on many things, but there are a lot of, there's a lot of common ground there. But I think it kind of goes to show that if it literally was just only narrowed down to Trump versus Clinton, that would seriously open the door for a legitimate third-party run, and somebody with the name recognition and the support, like maybe Sanders and Johnson on the right, would be a very strong. It would be a very strong competition between these two old parties that people have kind of are starting to give up on. Maybe. I mean, you got the Hillary people, and I know some of them personally, and it's just like, we're going to vote for Hillary Clinton because I'm a Democrat, and that's pretty much, and why not? And then you got the people, the Republicans that are going to vote for the Republican just because. But you got a bunch of other people now that are, some of them are supporting Trump at the moment, some of them are supporting Sanders at the moment, that are really legitimately asking questions about these two parties and saying, look, there's something wrong. They don't represent us any longer. Like they haven't represented us for a long time, and they've done a bunch of stuff that we don't agree with. So like there's people legitimately out there looking for different alternatives.
Nick, I think what the Sanders campaign is showing is with like these micro donations that maybe we can kind of change the face of politics in general. Maybe we need to have more representation, like more people, and divide districts even further and just split up the power more and more and more, and have more normal people, not these career politicians, and have people going in and out and being funded by us, Make it so that if Citizens United not only gets repealed, but then you pass something that's like the polar opposite, like, so I don't know, say you're a Fortune 500 company, you can't do anything at all, you can't do any lobbying because that's graft. Imagine if that could take over for the coming generations.
Yeah, dude, it'd be very interesting, and you're right. I mean, Sanders has inspired more than 2 million people to donate to his campaign, and his average donation.
It's 5 now, dude.
Yeah,
it's almost 6.
It's a lot of people, and its average donations are pretty low. And that's one of the things they've been saying about Hillary Clinton, because most of Clinton's donors are maxing out already. You know what I mean? So she if the race goes on long enough, she's literally going to run out of money, and it's only going to be the super PAC supporting her. Her campaign's not going to have any money.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess she has her own personal wealth, which can tap, all that Goldman Sachs money and stuff that she could finance with and stuff like that. And I'm sure she's got deep pockets in one way or another.
The thing Clooney just ran went right to her super PAC, so she can keep running those kind of events. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, their time sucks too, though.
Yep. And what you're talking about, I think, is more of like a crowdsourced campaign. And those that were watching what was going on back in 2012 will remember that Ron Paul did the same thing, that kind of like what Bernie Sanders is doing on a much smaller scale. Albeit very similar. He had these things called money bombs, and it was very much a crowdsourced campaign. He wasn't getting money from any big companies or banking systems or anything like that, like Hillary. And Cruz now, of course, is the main benefactor. I don't think the party is going to accept Cruz either. I think they're going to try to push for that brokered convention and try to get whoever the hell they want to be the Republican nominee to do their bidding. I think even Cruz, as much of an insider as he is, I mean, damn, his wife works. She's on leave right now from Goldman Sachs. I mean, how much more of an insider can you get? That's still not enough for the Republican Party. And so they want someone deeply, deeply in their pocket that they have a lot of leverage over. Rubio was the guy they wanted, but obviously that didn't work out, at least for now.
They'll just have to go with Trump at this point, Nick, because they'll split their own party and then they'll lose for sure.
Yeah, and so what I've actually seen from a lot of these neoconservative think tanks and from these neoconservative commentators is that literally if it did come down to Trump versus Clinton, a lot of these Republican establishment people would actually, at least maybe not openly, publicly, but they would, behind closed doors, would actually be pulling for Clinton because she is actually more of a neocon than Trump is, because as much as Trump is a demagogue and fascist leanings and that all that stuff, the establishment wants to be able to do the stuff that Trump is talking about doing, stirring up discrimination, stirring up racism, supporting nationalism and all that. They want to do that, but they don't want people knowing that they're doing it, and that's why Trump isn't a good messenger, because he's like coming out in the open saying, hey, we're going to torture people, we're going to be racist, we're going to close the lid on immigration, we're going to not let any refugees in the country. I mean, he's saying what they're actually, what they've been doing for a long time, and they're like, holy shit, dude, we can't let this guy, kind of lift the veil on our operation here. We got to have someone in there that's going to be nice, like maybe Kasich or somebody that's going to act like they give a shit and act like they care.
Exactly.
Well, behind the scenes, it's like, drone strikes, torturing, waterboarding, regime change, all the shit that Hillary Clinton is now we know that she's done thanks to the email release. They want a Republican nominee in there that's going to do all that stuff, but at the same time present this more palatable, nice, caring, giving type of personality, like maybe Kasich. I mean, he's like the perfect Republican establishment kind of guy. I mean, Jeb Bush even, but his name is just so tainted that it's just not a possibility, at least in my opinion. But Trump, I mean, all he's doing is saying the stuff. He said that he wants to kill the families of terrorists. It's like, oh my gosh, that's so bad. Well, guess what? Obama's already doing that shit. Obama's already done it. Obama killed a 16-year-old U.S. citizen via drone strike without charging him with anything, just because his dad was a suspected terrorist. And he hadn't even seen his dad in like 2 years. And the kid was blown up, and the media didn't give a shit. Trump comes out and says it openly, like, yeah, we're going to blow up the families of the terrorists. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe he's saying that. It's like, yeah, but where was that same media coverage when Obama literally did that? You know what I'm saying? And so that's why Trump is being thrown under the bus here, is because not because he's like anti-establishment, not because he's like he's going to actually do something that's going to scare the hell out of the people running the country, because he's not. It's because he's giving it away. He's like telling everyone that, yeah, this is what we're going to do, guys. And, people, it's not palatable. It's not, people aren't really accepting of saying like, look, we're going to torture the hell out of people. People like general public is like, yeah, that's kind of bad. Like, I don't think we should be torturing people. That's kind of weird. I mean, I don't know if we should do that.
Well, it opens it up against us. Think about that, and think about the things that go our own soldiers undergo on the battlefield when they get taken captive. And I mean, it's just not good policy. And we're at the point now where our government's basically insane, and the rest of the world knows we don't play by any rules, so they don't have any for us, and that's going to come hurt us. I mean, if we actually get into a conflict, do you know the kind of hatred that's going to come on our shores because of the policies we've allowed our government to undertake?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and it's kind of like these comments on how they're gonna. Recently, Ted Cruz said that he's like open to patrolling Muslim neighborhoods to go and secure, quote unquote, secure Muslim neighborhoods and stuff like that. And then Trump kind of signed off on it. That's the kind of stuff that maybe people that are living in fear every day, and they're like, oh my God, the terrorists are going to kill us, and I'm so afraid of my neighbors and stuff. Maybe that'll make them comforted a little bit. But how long is it going to be until it's like, okay, well, now we're also going to say, well, this certain group of Christians have been giving us issues, and we got to go into their neighborhoods and secure those, and that this certain minority group is causing increased issues, so we got to go into that neighborhood and secure those neighborhoods. I mean, it's a slippery slope, man, and I don't know if if people are aware of the government and the tendencies of government. And the most hilarious part is that many people supporting Trump claim to be like proponents of small government and stuff. But
Nick, it always starts with consent, Nick, because otherwise, if not, it's like 1776 again. So they're not going to play that game with us. They're going to try to make us fight each other first.
Yeah, they're going to try to get us to consent to all this stuff, just like the majority of the American public consented to the Patriot Act and consented to the war in Iraq. I mean, those were popular ideas at the time, right? And then we found out later, it's like, oh, shit, they were lying to us. They told us they were going to only spy on terrorists. Now they're spying on us. They told us that Saddam Hussein was, somehow, involved in 9/11, or that he was going to endanger us. And then we come to find out, oh shit, that wasn't true. And it's like later on you find out, damn, maybe we shouldn't have done that. But at the time, they're really good at selling this stuff, man. They're really good. The propaganda and stuff. They're good at selling this stuff, and people are like, oh, at the time they can consent to it. Like, hey, maybe people would consent to, yeah, maybe we should patrol Muslim neighborhoods. Maybe they'll consent to that. But then when it takes a darker turn, then later on people are like, oh shit. Maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe we should have thought a little better about that. You know what I'm saying? We got a caller on the line from 260 area code. Thank you for calling us. You're on the Anti-Media Radio Show. We're talking about all kinds of stuff tonight. Our show promo meme was about the huge prison population we have in the United States. We're talking about the election here. We're about to shift gears and talk about the drug war and a few other things. Caller from 260. Sorry. What do you want to talk about tonight?
You guys' topics are pretty cool. Like the election's kind of been a big issue, but more important to me is kind of like the side issues of just like distractions and everybody being against each other all the time. I know there's like the left-right divide and everybody's perfectly aware of that. But it's like we kind of concentrate on the negativity instead of like working on solutions sometimes. Like if anybody's familiar with like the ANCAP debate, it's kind of like the same thing as the left-right paradigm.
Yeah, definitely, man. And unfortunately, like our society is built on these team efforts, and everyone's got to pick a team, and nobody's allowed to remain neutral, and then neutrality is kind of frowned upon nowadays. Where it's like, well, either you got to pick one side, and you got to fight vehemently against the other side, and then that's kind of the end of the story. And that's how and I think that plays right into the hand of anyone that's trying to control anyone else. It's like, and this is the same tactic that has been used over in the Middle East for a long time. It's exploit the Sunni Shia divide, have them fight each other, and then then no one else has to deal with these countries. You know what I'm saying? And this is exactly, and funny that you mention it. This is exactly the kind of tactic that we're finding out that Hillary Clinton was actually pushing in Syria is create a Sunni Shia civil war in Syria. That way, neither one of those, neither group can gain power and start asserting themselves on the international scene, and therefore Israel doesn't have to worry about them. And this is literally coming right out of the emails of Hillary Clinton. It's like, look, if we pit them against each other, have them fight, we neutralize them, and then we sit back and we get to, do what we want to do. And scaling it down to, like, just like you said, the anarcho-capitalists, the anarcho-communists, the Republicans, the Democrats, the socialists, the libertarians, everybody bashing head-to-head against each other. They're all looking horizontally and not bothering to look upward. And that's the thing, is like, we all need to start looking upward and seeing, like, dude, it's like all these guys are laughing at us while they're sitting there making, robbing us blind, starting wars all over the world, doing whatever the hell they want. Meanwhile, it's like, oh, liberal, conservative, socialist, libertarian, we're all bashing each other, fighting each other, having our own little miniature civil wars. And those guys are like just getting away with whatever the hell they want. I mean, you make a great point. We need much more solidarity. I think there's so much more stuff in common between a lot of these groups, the activists, the left, the right, the people that are motivated right now in this election, which would be, some of the people that are leaning towards Trump and some of the people that are leaning towards Sanders are highly motivated and trying to be highly engaged in the system. And I think we need to shift away from the distractions. And we talked about this in great detail in our last show about how the Trump campaign is literally everything that almost everything that he's talking about is pretty much superficial, distractionary measures, whether it's banning Muslims or building a wall on the border. I mean, these things are just like reactionary things that are caused by deeper issues that we're not paying attention to, because we'd rather be lazy about it and say, yeah, just build a damn wall so we don't got to deal with, like, why there's actually a refugee crisis in Latin America. Because of a huge war on drugs and the Monroe Doctrine and regime change that the U.S. has backed for several decades down there, overthrowing governments that are democratically elected. Let's just build a wall and let's talk about it being superficial and be lazy instead of looking deeper and what's causing these kind of things. And
you know what I think that is, though, is I think that's that standard control of the language, where it's all about controlling the narrative, controlling the language. They put their buzzwords in. They have their talking points. They're controlling the conversation. And then the left side throws out, well, we have this opinion, and this is how we plan on dealing with it. And the right throws this out, and everybody laps it up off the floor like a bunch of dogs.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Nobody's thinking about anything for themselves. They're just taking whatever the status quo is from their party line that they prefer, you know what I mean, and just soaking it up and then spitting it right back out.
Yeah, great point, man. And it's going on right now as we speak with this whole thing where it's like Trump said that women should be punished for having abortions once he gets into office and bans it. And the left is like, no, we need to the government needs to fund abortions. And then it's this huge battle and everyone's like, oh, screw you. I hate you. You don't support abortion. Screw you. And it's like, oh, well, you do support abortion. You're a baby murderer. And it's like, dude, like, don't you guys understand? It's like this narrative is being manufactured so that you guys are focusing in on this and not actually worried about the larger issues at hand here, which is the corporate oligarchy that has overcome the entire Western world pretty much. That is calling all the shots, being responsible for hundreds of thousands and millions of deaths around the world, causing refugee crises, causing poverty in Latin America, and causing a bunch of horrible things to happen. And we're just sitting here talking about banning Muslims and building walls and having the government pay for abortions. And so that's, a great point, man. It's very much a distractionary thing. I think the election itself, the general election itself, the big presidential elections, almost always they're either propaganda to create a consent for war or to reduce your liberties or whatever, or just a big distraction, and focusing on issues that should have already been settled or that the government shouldn't even be injecting itself into. DB, what do you think, man? Hey, DB.
Sorry, mute mic, man. But yeah, dude. I mean, that's what it's coming to a head. I mean, people are starting to see. Think about what our military budget, 57% of 1.1 trillion. So in other words, something like 680 billion. Think about if we just took even like 10 or 15% of that, and what that could do with for our country's infrastructure, education, etc. So people are starting to see, man, that we're living under like a junta. We really are. And we cloak it in patriotism, but in reality, it's just a corporate war machine. And I think people are starting to understand that, and it puts us at risk because it's not like we have underground bases to run away to.
Or moon bases.
Yeah, wherever.
Some of these tech billionaires are talking about building a getaway over on the moon now. I mean, these guys are getting pretty serious. And it was what's his name? Stephen Hawking actually recently in an interview with the BBC was actually saying that hey, we gotta be really careful in the next 100, 200 years because if we allow things to go how they're going, the probability is just going to keep increasing that the humanity is going to destroy itself through wars and through horrible things. One of the big threats he talked about actually was genetically modified viruses that could wipe out the human population, or nuclear wars and things like that. And Hawking was like, dude, we got to be really careful the next couple hundred years because it's going to take us that long until we can start getting out of the Earth and like getting populations growing around the solar system outside Earth, so that we can continue, so that humanity continues on. Because if not, we're going to be in for maybe an extinction event coming very soon. Because he's very concerned about the assholes that are running the show right now, and as many other people, and I'm sure many of the people listening to the show tonight are concerned as well. Stephen Hawking shares those concerns with us, and so he's put a warning out for that stuff too. And so it's a very very real issue that we gotta be prepared for, because as the caller was mentioning, if we don't start getting past this divide and conquer stuff, man, we're just going to be perpetually neutralized, and it's going to be like, well, the Bernie people versus Trump people, and they fight each other, and then the real establishment, the guys that don't give a shit about Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, they're sitting back like they're kind of having a field day with this stuff, and they're just laughing about it, really, and so that's got to end, dude. I want to shift gears here a little bit. Go ahead. The caller from 260. Go ahead, man.
Yeah. I'm John, by the way, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you for calling in.
I wanted to say something about this two-party game that they're playing, and especially with how it's been playing out with Bernie and Hillary, with him getting more votes with the popular vote and her winning with delegates. These kinds of things are like a massive sign to everybody right now that the whole two-party system is bullshit, and that democracy as it is right now in this country is bullshit. And it's like, that right there, I mean, it really pisses me off and it gets under my skin. But at the same time, I'm thankful because it's like, it's really opening everybody else's eyes up. Like, there's a lot of people looking at libertarianism right now. There's way more people asking about anarchy right now than in the last couple of years. You know what I'm saying? So it's like people, instead of just following the status quo, are trying to think for themselves. And I think that right there is really exciting, which, I mean, I've been seeing a lot more solutions in conversation lately. And I think it's because everything is so messed up, and it's like, it is such a massive distraction. Like, I've heard people from other countries that are making fun of it.
Exactly. Like, and there's an old saying about how out of destruction comes creation. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what's going on right now, is that there's people that, I think there's a lot of people in the Bernie camp that actually care about the world, and they want things to change, and they're looking for hope, and they're looking for something to happen, because they know something is not right. I think maybe, of course, Bernie is not a perfect candidate, and he's majorly flawed in many ways, but his people over there that are supporting him, they know something ain't right. You know what I mean? And same with the Trump people, and I have a little bit less respect for the Trump people because they're a little more reactionary and hateful and stuff. But at the same time, the underlying issue here is that the people over there, even on the Trump side, are understanding. They know something is not right. They know something needs to be fixed. Something has to be done. And they see Trump as like, well, you know what? He's a businessman. He's not a politician. He's, the establishment hates him. There must be something that he's doing right, because, whatever it is, we support him for it, But you're right. There's out of this disintegration of the American political system is going to come creation. It's going to come more solutions than, it may be very dire for people right now looking at the prospect, oh my God, it's going to be Hillary versus Trump. This is horrible. But all that's going to be is more and more people looking for alternatives and more people looking in the direction of maybe Libertarian Party or Green Party or anarchism or working direct action or agorism or looking to like do stuff on their own because they're like, you know what? Like this federal government is like so out of touch. Like we can't even do shit with the elections. You know, talking about the superdelegates, you were mentioning the whole Hillary-Bernie race, you know, and that has become a huge controversy with the superdelegates. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the Democratic National Committee woman, has basically gone on record saying, you know, the reason we have these superdelegates is because we want to prevent a populist type of candidate from winning. So essentially it's like, this system was created to prevent a guy like Donald Trump because last time it gave us Jimmy Carter. And, you know, Jimmy Carter gets a really bad rap for being one of the worst presidents ever. But I look at Jimmy Carter as one of the only presidents that didn't start a war. You know what I'm saying? And Jimmy Carter was very similar to Bernie Sanders. And, you know, he made, again, not perfect. Some of his policies were way off, but he wasn't a warmonger. You know what I'm saying? Like Nixon was.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the whole superdelegate process was put in place to prevent a guy like Jimmy Carter or prevent a guy like Bernie Sanders from coming into place. Now, thankfully, because of the Bernie campaign and his success, people are realizing, oh shit, this isn't really a democracy. This is like, you know, this is something else. This is like, you know, they're choosing who's going to be the president. And then on the Republican side, it's the same thing. The Republican, one of the guys from the Republican National Committee, he went on record saying that the people aren't electing the Republican nominee. It's actually the delegates. But for deeper down the rabbit hole you go, you start to realize that in the Republican Party, almost all the delegates are actually kind of like super delegates. They can choose their alliances once they get to the convention. And so therefore they're not actually bound by popular opinion at all. And so And then the person that was interviewing this guy from the Republican National Committee said, well, then why do you guys even have these primary elections? And you know what his answer was? He literally said, that's a good question. I don't know. Like, so he's literally saying, like, we choose the candidate. And so basically what overall here, like the bigger picture here is like this. We got a big time corporate party in the Democrats that says, okay, here's your candidate. And we got a big time corporate party in the Republicans that says, okay, here's your candidate. And you guys get to choose between these two corporately hand-chosen candidates, and we're going to call that a Republican democracy. And I think people, like you were saying, at maybe the greatest rate, at least in my lifetime, and I'm about to be 30 years old, so I haven't been around too long. But like I was mentioning earlier in the show, even my grandma was saying, like, dude, this is the craziest election ever. I think this is maybe the greatest moment in time, the greatest election where people are going to see this entire system for the fraud that it is.
This is our generation's McGovern, and it's gonna piss the fuck off at the youth.
Oh man. Caller from 260, great call, man. Feel free to stick around. We're gonna shift into some a little bit more non-election stuff here. First off, we got a new research paper. Hold on, let me see what college it's from here. I think it was from Oxford. John Hopkins. There you go. And it was commissioned by The Lancet, which is a British medical journal, and they did a major research paper study on the drug war and the effects of the drug war, and they found that, quote, the drug war has had no measurable impact on supply or use, unquote, of drugs. And then they went on to say that public health benefits, cost savings, lower incarceration rates, and no significant increase in problematic drug use has been seen in countries that have taken broad moves to end at least the drug war at the petty level. So you know, you got a major medical journal and a major research organization coming out and saying, look, this drug war thing is just not working. We need to stop throwing people in jail that are getting caught using personal use narcotics or illicit substances, whatever you want to call this stuff. Even weed is in some places in the United States, weed is still a criminal issue where you get thrown in jail or prison. I mean, there was a guy recently that got let out that was on literally facing life in prison for getting caught with a couple pounds of weed. Yeah, he was going to sell it, but God, it's weed. It's harmless stuff. So this is this is really good. Last week on the Anti-Media, we covered one of Nixon's former policy advisors came out and said, you know what, the war on drugs was created to stifle the anti-war movement and to throw black people in jail. I mean, he came out plain as day. I mean, it wasn't new, but it was an interview from years ago that was recently published. And so I think, we're starting to see major setbacks for the war on drugs, and it's a major positive thing for the public at large. I mean, first of all, for all these people rotting in jail over non-violent or victimless crimes. And then also on the Anti-Media last week was a story we covered out of Hawaii, where Hawaii has just passed a initial study to find out if decriminalizing all drugs is a good move, and so Hawaii is actually considering decriminalizing all drugs throughout the entire state or territory, whatever you want to. Hawaii is kind of one of those places where it's like people that are native Hawaiians get mad when you call it a state, and people that are from the mainland get mad when you don't call it a state. Whatever, let's just call it Hawaii. Hawaii is legitimately, seriously considering legalizing all drugs. I mean, the war on drugs is coming up to an abrupt end, I think. And it's been going on for, in some way or another, it's been going on for a long time, ever since like Prohibition days and stuff like that. But majorly under Nixon, it started going really hard and locking people up and doing that thing. I think in many ways, according to like the Nixon advisor, I can't remember his name, but in many ways it was an answer. It was a way to counter the Vietnam anti-war movement. And so, we're starting to see really positive effects. I mean, we all know that cannabis now has become basically regularized. I mean, I even in Texas, I was there recently, and people aren't like, even weed in Texas has pretty much become relatively a normal thing. I know it was recently decriminalized for personal use in Houston, which is like the second largest city in Texas, I believe. So, there's major strides going on. A bunch of states now legalizing cannabis. I wouldn't doubt that in the next couple years that it's federally recognized for medical use and that kind of thing. So, that's some really good development here. And on the other hand, we've got this other medical survey, and this is a story on the Anti-Media that just came out, last story of the day. Shocking medical survey finds 99% of doctors overprescribe opiates. And so this looked into, it was a survey of a national survey of doctors, and it asked them about their prescription practices and things like that. And it found out that they're not going by the book. In fact, 99% of doctors are not going by the book when it comes to prescribing prescription opiates, which, Vicodin and Oxycontin, all those drugs that are highly addictive and that are stirring up very high addiction rates and overdoses. I mean, it's becoming a epidemic in the United States. I mean, heroin overdoses. And so what's going on here is that these doctors are loosely just giving anybody that is complaining about almost any kind of pain or even not even pain, other issues. And they're like, oh, you know what? Go ahead and take some Vicodin and, come back in a couple weeks. Let me know how it worked out, and that exact thing happened to me when I was younger, and I had my neck was injured. And I went to the doctor, and I was like, I went in there like, okay, these guys are going to give me an X-ray. They're going to look and see if something's wrong with my bones, and because my neck was really messed up. And I go in, the guy looks at my neck, he's like, okay, here's a prescription for Vicodin. Try this out. If the pain doesn't go away, come back and we'll try something else. It's like, dude, like this survey today kind of just reinforces that, is that they're just prescribing these drugs to basically anybody, and
they're getting bonuses for doing it.
Yeah, and then of course there's the kickback schemes and the free samples and all the crap that goes on with that. And then the bigger problem here is not only are the doctors just not really trying to find the causes of what's going on with people and their health, it's that now prescription opiates are basically the single largest driver of heroin addiction in the United States. 4 out of 5 new heroin addicts started out using prescription drugs. So this is a major epidemic. It's being caused by the quote-unquote legal drug industry. It's being caused by the pharmaceutical industry. And yet it's kind of like, okay, yeah, we let this stuff happen. But if you get caught with a joint, which is harmless, hardly addicting at all, it's like you can still throw you in jail for that. Total hypocritical nonsense, hypocritical policy. Thank you for tuning in to the Anti-Media. Caller, thank you for calling in. John, dude, great call. DB, what's up? The Anti-Media Radio.